The shuttle descended through the docking bay of the Corvathi space station and touched down with a gentle bump. Inside, Samuel Harrison straightened his tie and picked up his briefcase. He was 53 years old, with gray hair at his temples and calm brown eyes that seemed to hold no secrets. His suit was simple and gray. His shoes were polished but not flashy. Everything about him said that he was a quiet man who spent his days reading documents and attending meetings. The shuttle doors opened, and Samuel stepped out into the massive station. The ceiling rose hundreds of feet above him, covered in lights that glowed with soft blue colors. Thousands of aliens moved through the wide corridors, their bodies strange and wonderful in ways that still amazed Samuel even after all his years of service. Some walked on 2 legs like humans. Some crawled on many legs. Some floated on currents of air that their bodies produced naturally. The galaxy was full of life, and Samuel had seen more of it than most humans ever would. Katie Morgan followed him off the shuttle. She was his assistant, a woman of 32 with short brown hair and eyes that moved constantly. Watching everything around them, she carried a bag with their diplomatic credentials and a medical kit that never left her side. The aliens who saw her thought she was just a secretary. They did not know that she had spent 8 years as a combat medic, saving lives in the worst battles humanity had ever fought. She had pulled dying soldiers from burning wreckage and stitched wounds closed while enemy fire exploded around her. She was not just an assistant. She was a survivor. Ambassador Zorvik was waiting for them at the end of the corridor. It was Corvathi, a species that looked something like giant insects walking upright. His body was covered in hard plates the color of dark rust. His head had 2 enormous black eyes that reflected light like polished stone. Mandibles clicked beneath those eyes, making sounds that his translator turned into words. He stood nearly 8 feet tall and looked down at Samuel with obvious disgust. "So you are the human diplomat," Zorvik said. His translated voice was flat and cold. "I must say I expected something more impressive. Your species talks so loudly about its achievements. I thought perhaps you would send someone who looked less like prey." Samuel smiled warmly and extended his hand in the human gesture of greeting. Zorvik did not take it. Samuel lowered his hand without any sign of offense. "Ambassador Zorvik, it is a true honor to meet you. Earth hopes that our 2 peoples can build a friendship that benefits everyone." Zorvik made a harsh clicking sound that might have been laughter. "Friendship. Your species has been traveling between stars for barely 2 centuries. The Corvathi have ruled this sector for 12,000 years. You are children stumbling into a room full of adults. Remember that, human. Remember your place." Katie's face tightened with anger, but she stayed silent. Samuel simply nodded politely. He had heard far worse things in his life. He had been insulted, threatened, and tortured. Words bounced off him like rain off stone. Only actions mattered to him now. Only results. They were taken to their quarters in a section of the station reserved for lesser species. The rooms were small and uncomfortable. The beds were hard slabs designed for Corvathi bodies, not human ones. The lights were too dim and flickered constantly. The food dispenser produced gray paste that tasted like nothing at all. Everything about the accommodations was designed to remind the humans that they were unwelcome guests. "They really hate us," Katie said once the door closed behind them. Samuel set his briefcase on the table and opened it. Inside were data tablets, negotiation documents, and a small photograph of a beach on Earth at sunset. He looked at the photograph for a long moment before speaking. "They do not hate us. They fear us. They just do not understand that fear yet. Fear us. Samuel, they think we are insects. They think we are nothing. Every species that has thought that about humanity has learned the truth eventually. Some learned through trade and cooperation. Some learned through war." He put the photograph away and closed the briefcase. "I hope the Corvathi learn the easy way. I truly do." Katie did not ask what the hard way looked like. She had seen enough of Samuel's past to know the answer. The first negotiation session took place the following day in a grand chamber at the center of the station. Representatives from 12 different species sat around a massive curved table. The Corvathi sat at the head, the position of greatest honor. Other species filled the sides according to their rank and importance. The humans sat at the very end, furthest from power. Another insult. Another reminder. Zorvik spoke for nearly an hour. He listed demands that were impossible to accept. He wanted mining rights to human colony worlds. He wanted restrictions on human ships passing through Corvathi space. He wanted access to human medical technology and weapons research. In exchange, he offered only a basic promise not to attack human territories. Samuel listened to every word without changing his expression. His face remained calm and pleasant throughout the entire speech. When Zorvik finished, Samuel thanked him sincerely and asked for time to consult with Earth. Zorvik agreed with a wave of his clawed hand, clearly expecting the humans to either accept his terms or leave in shame. Outside the chamber, Valari Diplomat approached Samuel. Her body was made of living crystal that shifted colors as she moved. Her voice was soft like wind through glass. The Corvathi are always difficult, she said. Many species simply accept their demands rather than fight. Perhaps your people should consider doing the same. Samuel shook his head gently. Earth does not surrender. We find solutions. Every problem has an answer if you look hard enough. The Valari seemed confused but nodded and walked away. In the dark lower levels of the station, a different meeting was taking place. A group called the Crimson Talon gathered in a hidden room far from the eyes of security. They were Corvathi extremists who believed that no outside species should ever be allowed into their territory. Humans offended them most of all. These soft creatures from a violent world had spread too quickly across the galaxy. They needed to be stopped. Commander Vexer led the Crimson Talon. He was younger than Zorvik and filled with burning hatred. His scales were almost black, and his eyes glowed with fanatic intensity. He had killed many times before and felt nothing but satisfaction each time. One human diplomat, Vexer said to his 12 warriors, "Soft skin, no natural weapons, no armor. We kill him and send his body back to Earth as a message. They will learn that they are not welcome in our space." His warriors clicked their mandibles in agreement. They were trained killers, each one capable of tearing through metal with their claws. One soft human would be nothing. The diplomat would die before he even understood what was happening. Vexer smiled in the darkness. He had looked at Samuel Harrison and seen a weak old man who smiled too much. He had not seen the truth. He had not seen the decades of violence hidden behind those calm eyes. He had not seen the warrior wrapped in the diplomat's suit. He had not seen death waiting patiently to be awakened. 3 days passed on the Corvathi station. 3 days of difficult negotiations that went nowhere. 3 days of insults and demands and threats barely hidden behind polite words. Samuel remained patient through all of it. He smiled when Zorvik mocked him. He nodded when other delegates dismissed human proposals without consideration. He never raised his voice. He never showed anger. To everyone watching, he seemed like the most peaceful man in the galaxy. Katie watched him carefully during those 3 days. She knew what lived inside Samuel. She had read his classified file when they first started working together. The things he had done in his previous career would give most people nightmares for years. But looking at him now, sitting calmly while aliens insulted his entire species, she could almost believe he was exactly what he appeared to be. Almost. On the evening of the 3rd day, Samuel left a late meeting and walked back toward his quarters alone. Katie had gone ahead to prepare reports for Earth. The corridors in this section of the station were empty and quiet. The lights flickered overhead, casting strange shadows on the metal walls. Samuel walked slowly, his footsteps echoing in the silence. He knew he was being followed before he heard them. 23 years of combat training had given him senses that most humans did not possess. He felt the subtle vibrations in the floor. He noticed the slight changes in air pressure. He smelled the chemical scent of Corvathi excitement, a pheromone they released when preparing for violence. Samuel turned a corner and found himself in a maintenance corridor. The lights here were even dimmer. Security cameras hung from the ceiling, but their indicator lights were dark. Someone had disabled them. Samuel stopped walking and set his briefcase on the floor. 12 Corvathi warriors emerged from the shadows. They moved in a half circle, blocking any escape. Their scales were dark like Vexer's, and their eyes burned with hatred. Each one stood at least 7 feet tall and had claws that could slice through steel. They wore no uniforms but carried energy blades that hummed with deadly power. Commander. Vexor stepped forward from the center of the group. He was the largest of them, nearly 8 feet of muscle and armored plates. His mandibles clicked rapidly as he spoke, the translator turning his words into cold threats. Human diplomat, Vexor hissed. Your species should have stayed in your own little corner of the galaxy. You do not belong here. You never will. This is your final warning, delivered personally. Samuel looked at the 12 warriors surrounding him. He calculated distances, angles, and threat levels in less than a second. His implants, hidden beneath his skin, fed him data about Corvathi physiology. Weak points in their armor. Nerve clusters that would cause paralysis. Joints that would break under sufficient pressure. Everything he needed to know. I am going to give you one chance to walk away, Samuel said quietly. His voice carried no fear, no anger, no emotion at all. Take it, the Crimson Talon warriors laughed. The sound was harsh and cruel, like stones grinding together. One of them reached out and grabbed Samuel's shoulder, claws digging through his jacket and into his skin. Blood began to stain the gray fabric. Samuel moved. The warrior holding his shoulder did not even see what happened. One moment he was gripping the human. The next moment, his hand was broken in 3 places, and his throat was crushed by a palm strike that moved faster than his eyes could follow. He collapsed to the floor, choking on his own blood. Dead before he understood he was dying, Samuel flowed into the next warrior without pause. His elbow shattered the alien's knee joint. His fist drove into a nerve cluster beneath the creature's arm, causing instant paralysis. A spinning kick snapped the neck of a 3rd warrior before he could raise his blade. The remaining 9 warriors attacked together. It did not matter. Samuel was not fighting like a human. He was fighting like a machine designed for a single purpose. Every movement was perfect. Every strike landed exactly where it would cause maximum damage. He broke arms and crushed throats and shattered joints with mechanical precision. An energy blade swung toward his head, and he ducked beneath it, driving his fingers into the attacker's eyes. Another warrior slashed at his back, and Samuel twisted away, grabbing the creature's arm and using its own momentum to throw it into 2 others. For seconds. In 4 seconds, 8 more warriors fell to the floor, broken and bleeding and unconscious. Some would live. Some would not. Samuel did not particularly care either way. Vexor stood alone now, his energy blade trembling in his grip. He had watched his elite soldiers fall like children fighting a storm. This soft human, this smiling diplomat, had destroyed 12 trained killers without breaking a sweat. Blood covered Samuel's hands and spotted his gray suit, but his breathing had not even changed. His heart rate remained steady. His eyes showed nothing but calm patience. What are you? Vexor whispered. His voice shook with a fear he had never known before. Samuel straightened his tie. A small gesture, almost absurd in the middle of the carnage around him. I am a diplomat, he said. I am here to negotiate trade agreements and build peaceful relationships between our peoples. He stepped over a fallen body and walked toward Vexor. But you decided to attack me. You decided to threaten my life. You decided to commit an act of war against humanity. Vexor raised his blade, but his hands were shaking too badly to hold it steady. You are just one human. Just one. Yes, Samuel agreed. And I am considered moderate among my kind. I am considered gentle. I am the one they send when they want peace. He stopped directly in front of Vexor, close enough to kill him in a dozen different ways. Imagine what they send when they want war. Vexor dropped his blade. It clattered on the metal floor, the sound echoing through the corridor. He fell to his knees, mandibles clicking in what his translator rendered as desperate pleading. Mercy, please. Mercy. Samuel looked down at the alien who had tried to murder him. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he reached down and placed his hand on Vexor's shoulder, the same shoulder that the first warrior had grabbed on Samuel's body just moments ago. You will live, Samuel said quietly. You will face justice for what you have done. And every species in this galaxy will learn what happens when someone attacks a human diplomat. Footsteps echoed from the corridor behind them. Katie arrived with station security forces, their weapons drawn and their faces showing shock at the scene before them. 11 Corvathi warriors lay broken on the floor. One knelt in surrender, and in the middle of it all stood Samuel Harrison, his suit stained with blood, but his expression as calm as it had been during negotiations. Katie looked at the carnage and then at Samuel. "Are you hurt?" Samuel glanced at the claw wounds on his shoulder. They were already beginning to clot, his implants releasing medical compounds into his bloodstream. "Nothing serious," he said. He picked up his briefcase from where he had left it. "We should contact Earth. They will want to know about this." He walked past the security forces as if nothing unusual had happened, as if he had not just killed nearly a dozen trained warriors with his bare hands, as if the galaxy had not just witnessed what humanity truly was. Behind him, Vexer remained on his knees, staring at the floor. He finally understood. He finally knew. The soft diplomat was Death, wearing a smile. News of the attack spread through the station within hours. By morning, every species on board knew what had happened in that maintenance corridor. They knew that 12 Crimson Talon warriors had ambushed the human diplomat. They knew that one unarmed human had defeated all of them in seconds. They knew that the galaxy had just witnessed something that changed everything. Ambassador Zorvik was pulled from his sleep by emergency communications. He stood in the council chamber before dawn, surrounded by representatives from 7 other species. Security footage played on the main screen, recovered from Samuel's personal recording device. Every human diplomat carried such devices in dangerous territories. Standard protocol. The Corvathi had not known this. They had thought the corridor was unweighted. The footage showed everything. 12 armed warriors surrounding a single human. That human asking them to walk away. And then violence so fast and so precise that several delegates had to watch the recording multiple times at reduced speed just to understand what had happened. "This is not possible," a Mendari delegate said. His species was large and strong, known throughout the galaxy as fierce warriors. His 4 eyes blinked rapidly as he watched the footage again. Humans are classified as Category 3 predators, endurance hunters. They should not possess this level of combat capability. Katie stood beside Samuel at the far end of the chamber. She had treated his shoulder wounds herself, though his implants had already done most of the healing. Now she watched the alien delegates argue and exclaim with something close to satisfaction. "Their homeworld," another delegate said, pulling up data on a holographic display. Gravity of 9.8 meters per second squared. Atmospheric oxygen content of 21%. They evolved on a planet with active tectonic plates, extreme weather patterns, and apex predators in every ecosystem. Their world is classified as a Category 12 death world. "Many species come from difficult worlds," Zorvik interrupted. His voice was sharp, but it lacked the confidence it had carried 3 days ago. "That does not explain what we just witnessed." Samuel finally spoke. His voice was calm and even, as if he were discussing trade regulations instead of the 11 bodies currently in the station's medical facility. "Every human diplomat assigned to contested space has served in our military for at least 15 years. Most have served for longer. It is standard protocol for our species." The chamber fell silent. "You send soldiers as diplomats?" the Valari delegate asked. Her crystalline body flickered with colors that indicated deep confusion. "We send experienced individuals who can protect themselves if necessary," Samuel replied. "Humanity learned long ago that peace is best negotiated from a position of strength. We do not seek conflict, but we are always prepared for it." Zorvik's mandibles clicked rapidly. The translator struggled to keep up with his agitation. "You deceived us. You came here pretending to be harmless, pretending to be weak." "I never pretended anything," Samuel said. "I am a diplomat. I am here to negotiate in good faith. Your people attacked me. They tried to murder me in a dark corridor. I defended myself." He paused and looked directly at Zorvik. "What would you have done in my position, Ambassador?" Zorvik had no answer. The Mendari delegate pulled up more data on the holographic display. Human military history. Human warfare. Human weapons development. The other delegates watched with growing unease as statistics and images filled the screen. World wars that killed millions. Nuclear weapons that could destroy entire cities. Soldiers who continued fighting with injuries that would kill members of other species. A history of violence so intense that it had shaped their entire civilization. They call their special forces Reapers, the Mindari said quietly. Elite warriors who undergo 20 years of training, genetic modifications, cybernetic implants. They are designed to be perfect killing machines. He turned to look at Samuel. You are one of them. A Reaper. Samuel did not deny it. I retired from that service 15 years ago. I chose a different path. You chose diplomacy, the Valari said slowly. After being trained as an assassin, because I grew tired of war, Samuel replied. Because I believe that understanding is better than destruction. Because I have seen enough death to last 1,000 lifetimes, and I would rather build peace than add to the suffering. His voice remained calm, but there was something deeper in it now. Something that sounded almost like sadness. I did not want to hurt those warriors last night. I gave them a chance to leave. They chose violence. I chose survival. Katie watched the delegates process this information. She could see the calculations happening behind their alien eyes. Humans had been considered minor players in galactic politics. Aggressive, perhaps, but ultimately manageable. Now they were realizing the truth. Humanity had been holding back. Humanity had been polite. Humanity had been merciful. A Brixari delegate, whose body resembled a mass of floating tentacles, spoke for the first time. What does your government expect as a response to this attack? Surely they will demand consequences. Samuel nodded slowly. Earth will expect the Crimson Talon to be dealt with appropriately. We will expect the individuals responsible to face justice. And we will expect assurances that such attacks will never happen again. He paused. However, I am authorized to continue negotiations if the Korvathi government demonstrates good faith. We came here seeking partnership, not conflict. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Humanity was offering mercy. They could demand far more. They could threaten retaliation. Instead, they were offering to continue as if the attack had been a minor inconvenience. Zorvik understood what this meant. He understood that humanity was showing strength through restraint. Any fool could respond to violence with more violence. It took true power to respond with an open hand instead of a closed fist. The Crimson Talon will be dealt with, Zorvik said slowly. Commander Vexer will face trial for his crimes. The Korvathi government condemns this attack and offers our deepest apologies to Ambassador Harrison and to humanity. It was the first time Zorvik had called Samuel by his proper title. It was the first time he had spoken to a human with respect. Samuel accepted the apology with grace. He suggested that they take a short recess to allow tensions to settle before resuming negotiations. Zorvik agreed immediately. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, Katie walked beside Samuel through the corridors. Other aliens stepped out of their way now. They looked at Samuel differently. They saw the truth that had been hidden behind his peaceful exterior. You scared them? Katie said quietly. All of them. Samuel sighed. I know. I wish it had not been necessary. Do you think they will actually change? Do you think Zorvik will treat us fairly now? Samuel considered the question as they walked. Fear is not a foundation for lasting peace, he said finally. But it can be a beginning. It can create space for understanding to grow. He looked at Katie with tired eyes. I've spent my entire life learning how to kill. These last 15 years, I have been trying to learn how to build instead. It is harder than you might think. Katie nodded. She had seen the bodies in the corridor. She had seen what Samuel could do when he stopped holding back. And she had also seen him offer mercy to the creature who had ordered his death. Both things were true. Both things were human. What happens now? She asked. Now we wait, Samuel replied. We let the Korvathi demonstrate their good faith. We let the galaxy process what they have learned about humanity. And we hope that this moment becomes a bridge rather than a wall. In the medical bay, Vexer lay on a bed surrounded by the survivors of his failed attack. He stared at the ceiling with eyes that saw nothing. He kept replaying the moment in his mind. The human moving like lightning. The human's calm voice. The human's hand on his shoulder was granting mercy instead of death. He had spent his whole life believing that humans were weak. Now he knew the truth. The weak ones were the ones who had attacked. The strong one was the one who had chosen not to kill. The trial of Commander Vexer began 2 days after the attack. Corvethi justice was swift and public, meant to serve as an example for others who might consider similar crimes. The entire station watched on screens throughout the corridors. Other species across the galaxy received live broadcasts. This was not just a criminal trial. This was a statement. Vexer stood in chains before a panel of Corvethi judges. His dark scales had lost their shine. His eyes no longer burned with hatred. He looked broken in ways that had nothing to do with physical injuries. The creature who had led the Crimson Talon with absolute confidence now trembled before the judgment of his own people. Samuel watched the trial from the gallery, above the courtroom. Katie sat beside him, her face unreadable. Around them, delegates from a dozen species filled the seats, all watching the proceedings with intense focus. The human diplomat had become famous overnight. Everyone wanted to see him. Everyone wanted to understand what he really was. The evidence against Vexer was overwhelming. Security footage showed his warriors disabling cameras in the corridor. Communication records revealed his orders to kill the human diplomat. Testimony from surviving members of the attack confirmed that Vexer had planned everything personally. There was no defense. There was no excuse. But what captured everyone's attention was the moment when Samuel was called to speak. He walked to the center of the courtroom floor with the same calm he showed in everything. He faced the judges and answered their questions simply and directly. Yes, he had been attacked. Yes, he had defended himself. Yes, he had offered the warriors a chance to withdraw before the violence began. His voice carried no anger, no desire for revenge. He spoke like a man describing weather patterns or trade statistics. Ambassador Harrison, the lead judge, said, "Corvethi law gives the victim of such attacks the right to determine punishment. Commander Vexer faces execution for his crimes. Do you accept this judgment?" The courtroom went silent. Every eye turned to Samuel. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. Would the human demand blood? Would he prove that his species was as violent as their history suggested? Samuel looked at Vexer. The commander stared back with empty eyes, waiting for death. "I do not accept execution," Samuel said quietly. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Even the judges seemed surprised. "I request exile instead," Samuel continued. "Send Commander Vexer to the outer territories. Strip him of rank and citizenship. Let him live knowing that his hatred brought him nothing but shame." He paused. "Dead martyrs create more problems than living examples. If you execute him, others may see him as a hero who died for his beliefs. If you exile him, everyone will see him as a failure who threw his life away for nothing." The judges conferred briefly. They had expected the human to demand the harshest possible punishment. Instead, he had given them wisdom. Instead, he had shown mercy that made him look stronger than any act of revenge could have. "Hey, your request is granted," the lead judge announced. "Commander Vexer is hereby sentenced to permanent exile in the outer territories. He is stripped of all rank, citizenship, and rights under Corvethi law. His name will be removed from our records. He will cease to exist in the eyes of our people." Vexer collapsed to his knees. Execution would have been cleaner. Exile was a living death, a sentence that would follow him forever. He looked at Samuel with something that might have been gratitude or might have been hatred. It was hard to tell. Samuel walked out of the courtroom without looking back. 2 days later, a human military ship arrived at the station. It carried Colonel Nathan Pierce, Samuel's former commanding officer from his Reaper days. Nathan was 62 years old, with silver hair cut short, and a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. He walked through the station with an escort of 4 human soldiers, all of them wearing simple uniforms that did nothing to hide the danger they represented. The Corvethi leadership had requested this meeting. They wanted to understand what they were dealing with. They wanted to know the truth about humanity. Nathan met with Zorvik and the station council in a private chamber. No recording devices were allowed. No witnesses except those directly involved. This conversation would never be made public. You attacked one of our diplomats, Nathan said, without any greeting or pleasantry. His voice was flat and hard. Let me be absolutely clear about what that means. Zorvik's mandibles clicked nervously. The Crimson Talon acted alone. They do not represent the Korvathi government. That does not matter, Nathan replied. What matters is that someone on your station tried to murder a representative of humanity. Samuel Harrison is considered one of our more restrained veterans. He is known for his patience and his mercy. He is the one we send when we want peace. And if you wanted war? Zorvik asked quietly. Nathan leaned forward. His eyes held no warmth at all. Then we would not send diplomats. We would send fleets. We would send ground forces. We would send everything we have until there was nothing left to fight. He paused. Humanity does not abandon its people. We do not forgive attacks on our representatives. And we do not forget. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They had seen the footage of Samuel fighting. They had read the files on human warfare. They understood now that they had been dealing with predators wearing the masks of prey. What do you want from us? Zorvik asked. What will satisfy humanity? Nathan stood up and walked to the window. Outside, stars glittered in the endless black of space. Samuel asked for exile instead of execution. He chose mercy when he could have chosen blood. That tells you everything you need to know about what humanity. Once, he turned back to face the council. We want peace. We want trade. We want to be part of this galaxy's future. But we will not be threatened. We will not be attacked. And we will not tolerate disrespect. Then we will give you respect, Zorvik said slowly. We will give you fair negotiations. We will give you everything you came here seeking. Nathan nodded. Good. Then Samuel will continue his work. And this incident will become a lesson rather than a tragedy. He walked out of the chamber, leaving the Korvathi to process what they had learned. Meanwhile, news of the attack had spread far beyond the station. Security footage of Samuel's fight had gone viral across every information network in the galaxy. Species that had never heard of humanity were now watching a single human defeat 12 trained warriors in 4 seconds. Governments that had dismissed Earth as a minor player were suddenly requesting diplomatic meetings. Military organizations were revising their threat assessments. The soft creatures from the death world had revealed their true nature. They were not weak. They were not helpless. They had simply been polite. They had simply been holding back. And now the galaxy understood that humanity's restraint was a choice, not a limitation. In his quarters, Samuel received a message from Earth. The government was pleased with how he had handled the situation. They approved of his request for exile instead of execution. They believed this incident would actually help humanity's position in galactic politics. Samuel read the message and then deleted it. He sat alone in the dim light of his room, looking at the photograph of the sunset on Earth. His hands were still. His face was calm. But inside, he felt tired in ways that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. He had spent 23 years learning to kill, 15 years learning to build. One night of violence had done more for humanity's reputation than all his diplomacy combined. It was ironic. It was sad. It was the way the galaxy worked. Katie knocked on his door and entered without waiting for permission. She carried 2 cups of something warm and handed one to Samuel. You did the right thing, she said, asking for exile instead of death. Samuel took the cup but did not drink. Did I? Or did I just find a more effective way to use violence? Katie sat down across from him. Maybe both. Maybe that is what diplomacy really is. Samuel looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly and raised his cup. Maybe, he said. Maybe you are right. 6 months passed on the Korvathi station. 6 months of negotiations that had transformed from hostile confrontations into genuine discussions. 6 months of building something that might last for generations. Samuel Harrison had arrived as an unwelcome guest. He would leave as the architect of humanity's greatest diplomatic achievement, the signing ceremony. Took place in the same council chamber where Zorvik had once demanded impossible concessions. The room looked different now. Human flags hung alongside Korvathi banners. Delegates from 20 species filled the gallery, watching history unfold before their eyes. The trade agreement being signed would open Korvathi space to human merchants. It would establish military cooperation protocols. It would create cultural exchange programs that would send students and artists between worlds. Samuel stood at the signing table with his pen in hand. Across from him, Zorvik held a Korvathi signing instrument, a device that pressed the ambassador's unique chemical signature into the document. They looked at each other for a long moment before either moved. Ambassador Harrison, Zorvik said, "Before we complete this ceremony, I wish to say something." The chamber fell silent. Samuel nodded for Zorvik to continue. "When you first arrived on this station, I saw you as an insect, a creature to be tolerated at best and crushed at worst." Zorvik's translator rendered his words with unusual clarity, as if the device itself understood the importance of this moment. "I was wrong. Not just about you, but about your entire species. Humanity has shown strength that I never expected. But more importantly, you have shown wisdom." Samuel listened without expression, his calm eyes fixed on the Korvathi ambassador. "Could have demanded our surrender after the attack," Zorvik continued. "You could have brought fleets and armies and forced us to accept terms far worse than these. Instead, you offered your hand. You offered partnership. You showed mercy when you had every right to show none." He paused and his mandibles clicked in what Samuel had learned to recognize as deep emotion. That is true power. That is something the Korvathi must learn. Samuel finally spoke. "Ambassador Zorvik, I did not come here to teach lessons. I came here to build bridges. What happened in that corridor was not a victory. It was a tragedy. 11 beings died or were permanently injured because hatred blinded them to better possibilities." He set down his pen and looked around the chamber at the assembled delegates. "Every species in this room has the capacity for violence. That is not unique to humanity. What we choose to do with that capacity, that is what defines us." He picked up the pen again and signed the document with a smooth motion. Zorvik pressed his chemical signature beside it. The treaty was complete. The chamber erupted in polite applause that grew louder as the magnitude of the moment became clear. After the ceremony, Samuel walked through the station corridors one last time. He would be leaving the next day, returning to Earth for reassignment. Katie walked beside him as she always did, her medical kit still hanging from her shoulder even though she had not needed it in months. "You changed things here," Katie said. "Not just the treaty. You changed how they see us." Samuel nodded slowly. Perhaps they simply saw what was always there. Humanity is not complicated. We are exactly what we appear to be. We are creatures who survived a world that tried to kill us every day. We learned to fight because fighting kept us alive. But we also learned to love, to create, to dream. Both things are equally true. They passed a group of young Korvathi, who stopped and stared at Samuel with wide eyes. He had become something of a legend on the station. The human who could kill with his bare hands, but chose to sign treaties instead. The diplomat who was also death in disguise. Stories about him would spread across the galaxy for generations. Samuel smiled at the young aliens and nodded politely. They ducked their heads in a gesture of respect and hurried away, clicking excitedly to each other. "They are afraid of you," Katie observed. "Yes. But fear can become respect. And respect can become understanding. It takes time. It takes patience. It takes moments like these treaty signings, where people see that cooperation brings better results than conflict." Samuel stopped walking and turned to face Katie. "That is why I left the Reapers. That is why I became a diplomat. I grew tired of ending lives. I wanted to start building them instead." Katie smiled. "You have built something important here. Earth will be proud." "Earth will be practical," Samuel corrected gently. "They will use this treaty to expand trade and gather intelligence and position humanity for future advantages. That is how governments think," he shrugged. "But individuals can think differently. Individuals can hope for more." They continued walking until they reached a large observation window. Stars stretched across the darkness outside. countless points of light representing worlds and civilizations that humanity was only beginning to understand. Samuel stood before the window and looked out at the galaxy he had spent his life serving. "I met a young Corvathi yesterday," he said quietly, "a student at their diplomatic academy. She told me that she had watched the footage of my fight with the Crimson Talon over 100 times. She had studied every movement, every strike, every second of violence." He paused. Then she told me that what impressed her most was not the fighting. It was what I said afterward. The offer of mercy. The choice to build instead of destroy. Katie stood beside him, watching the stars. "That is a good sign." "It is a beginning," Samuel agreed. "Just a beginning. The galaxy is vast and old, and filled with species who have spent millennia learning to fear each other. Humanity is new to this stage. We have so much to prove, and so many mistakes waiting to be made." He pressed his hand against the cold glass of the window. "But we also have something rare. We have the ability to surprise. We look weak and prove strong. We seem violent and choose peace. We are contradictions walking upright, and that confuses our enemies more than any weapon could." A chime sounded through the corridor, announcing that the human shuttle was ready for departure. Samuel took one last look at the stars and then turned away. Zorvik was waiting at the docking bay. He stood alone, without guards or attendants. His posture was different than it had been 6 months ago. Humbler, more thoughtful. The arrogant ambassador who had called humans insects had transformed into something closer to a statesman. "Ambassador Harrison," Zorvik said, "I came to see you off personally. I wanted you to know that what you have done here will not be forgotten. The Corvathi will honor this treaty. We will work to become worthy partners for humanity." Samuel extended his hand. This time, Zorvik took it. The alien's clawed grip was gentle, careful not to harm the soft human skin. "That is all I ever wanted," Samuel said. "Partnership. Understanding. A future where our species can learn from each other instead of destroying each other." He released Zorvik's hand and walked toward the waiting shuttle. Katie followed close behind, already preparing.